Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the updated BR changes for ground forces that have come in. And after a few months of certain heavy tanks completely dominating the meta, they are now being put up in BR. Overall, these changes look very positive. There are many that I disagree with, but what we're going to do is just go through them, give some thoughts as we go, and have a bit of fun. We'll be focusing on ground realistic, because that's the game mode I specifically play, and if you have any thoughts about any of them, make sure to stick them in the comments. It's always nice to read them. The first change is the PVKV4, which is going down to 3.3 from 3.7. I did an individual video on the PVKV4 if you want to know my thoughts, but the vehicle itself is just not very good. Even though it has the APDS, it's another Swedish system, which means that the APDS is at rank 4 or high rank, so you have to wait ages to be able to get the useful round. Because it's an APDS and how APDSs are modeled in the game, it doesn't always necessarily do the damage that it needs to do. And also on top of this, the targeting speed of the turret and the gun hurts. The vertical aiming speed and then also the horizontal is some of the worst I've ever seen in a vehicle around that BR. The only one which is even close to it is the M10, which also has similar issues, but at least its round does a lot of damage, whereas the PVKV4, not always the case. Even the crazy reload couldn't help this thing, and it is, in fact, going down in BR. I would also personally say it might be worth having a look at the PVKV2, because that also has a similar situation, where the penetration on the round is not as good, and the post-pen is also not great for its BR. The Terran 3 is also going up from 3.7 to 4.0. No surprise there, but it does mean that it's out of that kind of area for Italy, that 3.7 behemoth lineup that exists. I still think there are a few 4.0 vehicles, so it'll be fine. I just don't want the Hungarian tree for Italy to become just lone wolves, which unfortunately certain parts of it are. For example, the 2S1 and also the BTR-80 just don't have lineups around them, and that kind of hurts. Hopefully that doesn't happen to the Terran 3. But the Terran 3 itself, the reason why it's going up is its mobility. It has exactly the same armament as the Panzer IVs, and that armament is one of the reasons why, those vehicles can feel really powerful, especially against a lot of stuff that they face. The issue with them, though, is their mobility, where the Terran 3 can peak pretty effectively because it has a transmission. That means it can go backwards incredibly fast. So you can get in and out of combat super quick, fire the gun, and then you're all good. So seeing it go up in BR, no surprise for me. I think it might be worth having a look once again at the Panzer IVs and maybe putting some of those up in BR, especially now that this area of the tech tree is getting affected by BR decompression. The T1E1 is also going up in BR, probably the same reason for the Terran 3. It's actually got a useful transmission. The T1E1 is just an M6A1, but it has way more mobility. And as we've seen over the years, mobility is something that is highly prized right now when it comes to War Thunder. Especially now a lot of the maps are becoming a lot more direct, so there aren't as many flanking routes. Basically, you have to get to the power positions quicker now because there are more people vying for them. So vehicles like the T1E1, which can, move about the place and also have a good reverse on it, so it can once again get out of dodge, unlike stuff like the M6A1, really is valued in this current meta. So to see stuff like this and the Terran 3 go up is no surprise to me. The T1E1 also has the wonderful stabilizer on the 76, making it super useful. And seeing a lot of the other vehicles go up around it, and seeing it go up as well, not really surprising at all. The Osman 2 also goes up from 5.0 to 5.3. This vehicle has been very good for the longest time. A lot of these mid-tier AAs kind of struggle with their targeting speed and also their firepower in the form of rate of fire. The Osman 2 is not one of those. It's able just to put out a ton of damage in the air as it goes around. Kind of surprised me that it's stuck at 5.0 for the longest time, especially since it was supposed to be the replacement of course, the Kugel Blitz that was removed. Actually, no, it wasn't the Kugel, was it? It was the Coelian that was removed, sorry. But the Osman 2 is really good. The problem I have with SPAAs at these tiers is not them. I think generally they function pretty well. It's just the fact that CAS add this BR, especially after they added separate bomb drops for a lot of vehicles around these BRs, plus they added loadouts, which you are able to choose specifically, like custom loadouts. They have become incredibly more powerful than the AAs. And also the addition of overpressure and how it works with the Oswin 2 and many others since they're open-topped is really bad. As I said, I prefer a world in War Thunder where stuff like the Oswin 2 actually stays slightly lower BR than it should be because of how dominant CAS can be if it's allowed to be out. I would prefer people to go towards favoring stuff such as AAs instead of just leaving games because of the CAS. They're putting up the IS-1 from 5.3 to 5.7. They were actually doing this change in arcade and decided to also do it in realistic. Not really a surprise. It follows all of the other heavy tanks that have gone up in BR, and, you know, we talked about this last time. It isn't a surprise at all. Like, these heavy tanks have been very dominant in the meta, especially since they moved up a lot of the other vehicles in and around the area in previous BR changes. And these heavy tanks, they were allowed to be pretty egregious in the meta. Like, stuff like 4.3s just cannot deal with IS-1s, especially since the IS-1 has the 85, just like a lot of 4.3s really struggled with dealing with the Tiger H1 as well, since it was at 5.3, now going to 5.7. So it's following the continued BR decompression that we've seen previously, but also these are positive changes. Heavy tanks had a really good time for like 3 months in certain areas, and still some of them will have a great time, especially because some have been what feels like moved off the list. But overall, it's a positive thing that this is happening, especially after the volumetric shell changes. They're also moving out the Panzer 470V. If you've never played this thing, it has a really good set of armor on the front of it, which makes it very annoying to face, and also has a pretty good gun as well. The major issue with the vehicle is, of course, it doesn't have a turret. So basically, if you get tracked or if you get barreled, you're basically dead. And if you get flanked, you're obviously dead too. But the vehicle is, you know, for an SPG at that tier, there's a lot of vehicles that just couldn't pen it frontally or couldn't really do anything against it. So I feel like putting it up following the BR decompression is fine. The Jumbos are also going up to 5.7. The Jumbos, it's a weird one, right? So I remember talking about a few years ago when they went up in BR, like, I think it was twice, they were at 4.7. And they were facing stuff like Panzer IV F2s, which kind of shows you how much the game has changed over the years. But the Jumbos were incredibly oppressive. They still are some of the vehicles that I use the most for events because they just nuked everything. It was so easy to play them, even on stuff like bad PCs. Nowadays, they're in a lot more weaker position, just like a lot of heavy tanks are. And basically what this meant was if you got downed, you would be able to do really well. If you played at your tier, there was a few, you know, beasts, generally other heavy tanks like Tiger H1s. And then if you got up tier, then it was a bit of an issue. So with these changes, I feel like I would have actually kept the Jumbos specifically at 5.3, because the idea of BR decompression, right, is you are supposed to kind of, you know, filter out the BRs with everything else that's kind of going on. But at the moment, with these changes, it doesn't really shift any of the vehicles around this BR. Instead, they're just all going up, which means that 4.3 is going to get a great retrieval, and maybe we can actually see a lot of those German vehicles finally go into that area instead of being stuck at 3.3 and 3.7. But also, at the same time, it's something that, you know, I feel like it isn't sitting true to the general idea. The KV-220 is going up to 6.0. I don't think anybody can disagree with this. It's nice to see they're finally remembering that event vehicles and premium vehicles exist when it comes to these lists. It did only take an updated one, so that's good. But yeah, this vehicle is going up because everything else is going up once again. All of this area is increasing. All of the meta vehicles that you see around these BRs is going up in BR. And even though the KV-220 is one of those that isn't seen as much by other players because, you know, it's such an old event vehicle, it really needed to go up. It has good mobility, decent armor if you can hide the the breach, and then also it has a good gun. It had everything that you would want whenever people saw it on the battlefield, because you hardly ever see them. People just didn't know how to deal with them, and that is continued and going to get worse and worse and worse, since less and less players are going to actually, still be active and using the vehicle. The 220 is insane, and it going up is completely fine in my opinion. The Jagdpanther G1 and also the Befehlswagen Jagdpanther are also going up to 6.3 from 6.0. They're also getting their fire rate increased to 8 shots per minute instead of 7. I'm fine with this, once again. It's something which is... it's something which you've got to understand. After the updated model of the Jagdpanther, they basically made it, once volumetric shells were also brought in, they made it pretty much impenetrable from the front. So basically, you would kind of wander around the place in like a 5.053 and just stare at it and go, oh, that's kind of cool. So what do I do against this? Well, once again, I suppose I track the thing, and I suppose I barrel the thing. And you've got to remember, with a lot of the map changes we've had recently, they have made the maps way more direct. So vehicles which have heavy armor on the front, stuff like the Jagdtiger, Jagdpanther, Panzer 470V, are all going to have a really nice time of it, because they can just kind of sit on sight lines and then go after people. And then, yeah, they'll probably get cast eventually, but at least overall, it's it's a pretty nice change. And the thing is, now that their armor is incredibly hard to pen with a lot of rounds, and also a lot of other vehicles are going up around them, it makes sense for them to do so too. They're also buffing them though, which should also help them out in certain ways. The other change they're making is the IS-2s. We talked about last time how they were going up in BR to 6.7, and now they've decided that once again they're doing that wonderful thing, just like they are with the Jagdpanthers and also many others here. They are adding a new round, the BR-471D, to them to make them better while they up their BR. I'm super sick of this. Look, I don't know how many times this has to happen. The IPM1 being the very much obvious case, whereas like, okay, we have to put up the BR of the IPM1 because it's doing much better than the standard M1, but we're not sure if it's going to be able to exist decently at that BR, so we'll get a new shell. And it goes up again, and it gets moved in the tech tree because it's now better than the M1A1 because it has a better reload and a better round, and also it has easier access to APF SDS. Now we're doing it with other vehicles too as well. You don't need to put up a vehicle in BR and then also buff it, right? In my opinion, you put it up and then you see how it goes for a few months, which is what they've done with all of these vehicles, by the way. They've waited 3 or 4 months to see which ones are dominant, see which ones are doing well, especially during the event. Then they have put in the BR changes. They should do exactly the same thing with the munitions on them. There is no need to give these things a better round because everything else that was their predators has also gone up with them. So I'm just hoping that they stop doing this because it's very annoying, and also at the same time don't think it really helps a lot of stuff. They're also changing the muzzle velocity on the M82 shell for the M26, M26 T99 and also M26 DC Ariete. I'm guessing this is a historical change, because usually, this is generally a historical change, so that is at least something to have a look at. The Tiger II 105 is also going up in BR to 7.0, so is the Panther II, and the Object 268, which is quite funny. So, the Tiger II 105. If this goes up, it is a functionally worse version of the Tiger II-H. The Tiger II-H should also go up. The Tiger II-H is the same BR as the Tiger II-P right now. Makes no sense. And if you are putting up the 105, you should definitely put up the H. Because the 105, they've increased its reload. Decreased its reload, by the way. So it's now 4.8 shots per minute instead of 3.9, which is a nice buff. But also, it is functionally worse than the 2H. So if you're going to put up this one, you should also put up the the other one, and which would follow the trend. The Panther 2 going up, it's also getting a fire rate buff as well, because we can't put up these vehicles, especially if they're German or Soviet, without buffing them as well. Why bother? Just keep them at the BR that they're at. You know, if you feel like you have to put these things up and also buff them at the same time, then all you're trying to do is make sure that they don't see stuff like 5.7s anymore, and those 5.7s, I suppose, are the jumbos and stuff, I suppose, like other Tigers, if they even see them. But yeah, so the Panther 2 goes up. The Panther 2 has always been the best 6.7 vehicle for Germany. The only rival it had was the RU-251, and the RU-251 got put up a long time ago now. So yeah, putting up those two, not a surprise. Once again, they're vehicles which not everybody has access to. I wish everybody did have access to them, but we live in a unjust world, I think is the way to put it. Then the 268 massively got it when it went down in BR. There was times, especially against certain enemies, it was just impenetrable. It had a really nice time to play, and also they removed its awful stock shell, which was one of the things that was really holding it back at the end of the day. So the vehicle itself is in a really good place, and seeing it go up, especially with everything else, is fine. I think it's okay. Very happy to see that. They're also putting up the IS-3 to 7.3, and this should have happened a long time ago. I honestly think the IS-3 should go up again. You know, it's been criminally under-BR'd for the longest time, and it's one of those which is just insanely strong in the meta, and the fact that the IS-6 now is actually going up to 7.7 and the IS-3 is still lower than it is just so silly at the end of the day. They are functionally the same vehicle, the way that you play them and the way that you go around and use them. It would be much better if these vehicles were the same BR, and I don't know why the IS-3 always sits below the IS-6, but yeah, it's just kind of odd to me that is the case. The Samoa SM is also going up because it should. If the Char 25T and MX-50 is going up, the Samoa had to go up too. They are similar vehicles, they all work the same, and everything like that kind of going into it. All of these vehicles, all of these heavy tanks that they're putting up are all justified, by the way, because they put up all of their Predators, as I said before previously, and they're trying to decompress certain areas of the matchmaking. All decent changes, all good to see. I just wish if we're gonna have a look at the IS-3, it just needs to go up a bit more. After many moons and many people completely obliterating the meta around 8.7, the Object 279 finally goes up to 9.0. Something that should have happened or should have been seen months ago when it came to this vehicle and how they stacked the 8.7 lineup around it. The 279 is functionally insane when you think about what it's able to do on the battlefield and what everybody is able to do with it. Because it's so simple to play, it is just a point-and-click adventure. I just remember reading so many times people trying to tell me that the vehicle itself was no good because it didn't have APFSDS, its armor was terrible, everything feels off on it, it doesn't have smoke grenades, whatever useless excuse people brought out to try and justify themselves slapping kids with what is objectively one of the most broken vehicles in War Thunder history. And now, after many months, it is finally going up in BR, and it should have done a long time ago. A lot of the other vehicles that are very good around the BR have also started to go up. Stuff like the T69-2G, the ZTZ-88, stuff that they buffed last time, by the way, with the reloads, now are increasing again. Who could have seen that coming? But luckily, with the 279, it finally goes up. It should have happened a very long time ago. As I said in a previous video, sometimes vehicles in War Thunder need to die. There are a ton of vehicles in the game that should never be part of the meta because they are so oppressive, so abusive to the average player, and they also don't get access to them. It is a terrible precedent and needs to be destroyed. Then we have the Freccia. It's going up in BR to 10.3 from 10.0, and so is the Ariete P. To be honest, I haven't played the Freccia, so I don't really have any thoughts on it, but once again, if it's doing well, not really too surprising with the actual loadout that it has and the mobility that it has. The Ariete P, when I spaded it ages ago, I always thought it felt really good. You know, it didn't have too many of the issues of the other Arietes because of basically what it was fighting, and also at the same time, you didn't come up against the crazy mega rounds while it was moving. I thought it was a pretty good MBT, so to see it go up, especially with after some of the decompression, I think it's fine. It's all good. Then the MBT 2000, which was definitely under BR'd when it came out, they've decided to pump it up 2 BR brackets and then add back the round that it had on the dev server, the DTC 10-125. I honestly think they should have just put it to 10.3 and not buffed it with this round. But at the same time, if they are going to put it up to 10.7, the round is fine. The vehicle itself is really good. Once again, just like the T1E1, just like the Turan 3, turns out a transmission on a vehicle is pretty handy for it being useful. They're also doing some other minor changes for ground. The SU-85, its fire rate has been increased to 10 shots per minute, so 6-second reload, and that's fine. It's a terrible vehicle, so whatever help it can get is good. And also the Chaparral, the default missile has been changed. So the MIM-72A has been replaced with the MIM-72C, and also the MIM-72E missile has been added. This is a positive change. It sucks that you have to grind so much of a vehicle to just get useful missiles on it. At least now it should have access to the all-aspect stuff straight away, which is a positive change. It would be really nice if AAs got access to their best armament to start with, just because a lot of them just get annihilated, especially when you have a look at a nation like Israel, which doesn't have a lot of options for this. You know, at least for America, you can swap it out for a different AA like the York, which is still incredibly powerful, but for Israel, you don't really have that choice. At the same time, the M82 muzzle velocity, we talked about it before, but it's changing on other vehicles too, which all have the 90mm, the Super Hellcat, the M36 GMC for US and China. It's all getting increased muzzle velocity. That's fine. It's a decent buff, but as I said, it's probably a historical change. All these changes are very good. I don't really disagree with any of them. The only one I would probably be wary of is the Tiger 2105, but we'll have to see how it plays after the reload buff. Really don't like this idea of buffing vehicles and increasing their BR. I would rather just have it so they are putting them up in BR. I understand why they're putting them up in BR and giving them a new shell. The idea is they're not trying to make the vehicle more balanced. They are actually trying to help other vehicles that have generally faced it and try to get it out of that BR bracket so they're not as oppressive. And therefore, if they put them up in BR to get away from them and they start going against other meta vehicles that are around the standard BR that they're at, then they need shells to be able to deal with it. I understand why they do it. I just wish they didn't. I don't think it's a good idea to do. I would rather, if they are struggling after a week or two, just give them the shell. You know, micro changes instead of large macro changes that have big effects of the game. Overall, these changes are very good. Nice to see the 279 finally get the treatment it needs. Now, hopefully, we can finally get the KV-1B and also E moved up to where they should be. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.